Hey everybody, Dan Schinder here with
Even Shinder.
On,
Yesshift.
and today we are celebrating
High Day.
Billy Sherwood's birthday. We've got some really neat
Yeah.
stuff. It's gonna be, that was funny. We're taking, I don't think we've done an episode like this in any way. You want to tell everybody what it's about?
Yeah, because we've done, I feel like in the past we've kind of done stuff, talking about the different hats that Billy has worn and its different roles in Yes. But for this one, I thought it would be interesting to primarily focus on his role as the sixth musician on stage during the tours for Talk, Open Your Eyes, and The Ladder, because it's kind of an unusual configuration, right? I think we kind of had something like that on the 9012 live tour, but the difference there being that Casey Young was playing keys under the stage rather than being visible on the stage.
Right.
And during the genesis of Talk, after the Union tour changes, there was the opportunity for Rick Wakeman to be part of the Talk lineup, but then because of scheduling conflicts, it ended up just going back to the 90125 lineup for that album. But for the tour, Trevor Rabin called Billy up to play multiple instruments on the tour, percussion, keys, guitar, bass, and do some vocals. So he wasn't an official member at the time, but he was a really, beneficial additional musician who really helped them out on that tour. And then, of course, later on, after he became an official member, he did the tours for Open Your Eyes and The Ladder. And we have had 6-person lineups since then. When Alan needed help from Jay or Dylan, and sometimes they played together. But in those instances, I personally didn't see Billy as the sixth musician because, he had joined a bit before that and become the bassist, which to me, with Yes Music, the instruments are primarily vocals, bass, guitar, drums, keyboards. So it was kind of different then. If anything, Jay and Dylan were the sixth musicians then, whereas in the 90s and up to 2000, it kind of felt different. Rhythm guitarist is not something you tend to usually see in a typical Yes configuration, and all the different instruments he did on the Talk tour. So that's kind of the reasoning for the title of this topic, when Billy Sherwood was the sixth musician on stage.
And in baseball terms, that first Talk tour, he'd be considered what would be the equivalent of a utility man, just working different positions, basically. Like I said, a little bit of keys, a little bit of vocals, a little bit of course, guitar, bass, some bass. In fact, I want to show that image first. This is really cool. And we're going to break down different things. And I guess we might as well start with Talk, yeah?
Yeah, and I just realized that this microphone is not plugged in, so I'm going to sound a bit better than I did before. So okay. Sorry about that.
It actually sounds okay. I didn't even notice, but then again, I forgot to put my hearing aids in.
Right. Okay, so I should sound better
you go.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like Steven.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
Yeah. So we've got these photos that we gathered from different periods. There was a more recent one that was used for the Yes official page, and then
here, the next one, rather. Sorry, let me go backwards. There we go.
Yeah, and then we've got from the Talk tour, Billy and Chris playing bass together during Endless Dream, and then we got Billy during Open Your Eyes.
Budapest.
Yeah, this is from Budapest. The previous one was from Santiago, 1994. And this is from House of Yes, live from the House of Blues, Billy on, I think this was during Awaken, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, I think that's the most different look he has out of these photos with the shorter hair.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's kind of funny is
my introduction to Billy, you would play to me that cassette tape that had live material from the Talk tour, and for the longest time, I didn't know he was involved on that, so I thought it was just the 90125 lineup.
And
And
for
then
context, folks, Steve was also very young. How old were you?
I was probably like very little when listening to that, like maybe 4 or 5 or something, and then kept listening to it up to like 7, 8-ish. I remember.
What typically
Um,
4 to 5-year-olds listen to?
I don't know. The intro to Arthur from PBS. I don't know. But yeah, and so when I eventually watched that House of Yes live from the House of Blues, and I was like 7 or 8, I was like, wait, who's this guy? And he had to like explain to me the context. And in that particular performance, sometimes he looked kind of resigned, whereas in some of these other things, like the Talk tour, for example, he seemed like, very smiley, happy to be there. And of course, I know from experience that how the facial expressions I make don't always convey how great I feel. So I totally get like that type of
Yeah, we're
thing.
not implying that he wasn't happy in the other instances.
Right. Of course.
And I saw all those tours also. We'll start with Talk. We'll go chronologically. And one of the things, so in all transparency, Steve and I watched some of each of these tours earlier today, and we talked about, okay, what's Billy doing here? Which sound is his? What's he actually playing? Stuff like that. We'll break that down for you. But I started to say something, and Steve knew exactly where I was going. So I just want to get this out of the way now. Many people who follow the show may have heard me say over and over that when I saw the Talk tour live at the Greek Theater, and Alan not only being a really good friend, being one of the most often guests on Drum Talk TV, I met him in 1989, became friends. So huge Yes fan, just as a disclaimer to what I'm going to say next. At the Greek Theater on the Talk tour, his drums sounded like cardboard boxes. I mean, like I couldn't get past it. I couldn't believe it. And I didn't have bad seats. I was like maybe a third to halfway back, right in the middle. It was mind boggling. But when Steve and I watched the tour that's from Santiago, right?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
video I watched. Yeah.
Yeah, the audio was impeccable as far as the drums. It was great. So I don't know if it's just how it sounded that night that I saw them, or if there was a bit of remastering. Even if there was remastering, they have to start out with a really good, source sound. So I was pleasantly surprised. I hadn't watched that in so long that I was like, oh wow, his drums sound amazing. So just a little footnote there. But Billy on the Talk tour, like we said, plays some bass with Chris. We'll get to that. Plays some keys, and we've got a song picked out, the mention on that, and played some guitar off and on. And in each of the instances, we saw him playing guitar. Yeah, on that tour as well as the latter, the guitar he used, except for one song on the latter, was a 12-string thin hollow body guitar. Both two different guitars, in fact. And we'll get back to the latter in a moment and what else he did there. But as of the stuff we looked at, Steve, what was either most surprising or most impressive to see that, oh, that's him playing that on that part, or however you want to give your take on what we looked at and what you saw?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what was the most surprising to me. What's funny though is what sort of sparked the impetus of proposing this idea for a topic is that when I listen to Yes music, I'm able to figure out who's playing what, but I'm like so used to the 5-person configuration. So like when it comes to the 6-person one, I'm like, which sounds are actually Billy's? I'm like kind of confused trying to figure out like what's his. And so while watching some of these, you had to like sort of walk me through like, oh, this is what he's doing. And sometimes it was very evident because it would show close-ups of him and what he's doing. Other times we sort of had to hear it out type of thing.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Steve's not a musician, and I am. I have a more knowledge of how the different instruments work. I play more instruments than just drums, but drums are my main instrument, any drums and percussion. So it's a little, and I've been in bands and, all of that. So it's a little easier for me to discern who's doing what between Steve and Billy and Chris and Billy and whatnot, and Tony and Billy for that matter. Because there is some keyboards. Let's talk about that. We noticed because the tour was so long ago, and I had maybe seen that film once and just didn't remember that. I was surprised to see he was playing keyboards in, if I remember, Steve, you have the notes, in the
Heart of the Sunrise.
Sunrise, yeah, in the grandiose part after it comes back to, after the big instrumental stuff, and it comes back to love comes to you and you follow, it gets real big, and Billy's doing some of those pads on the keyboards opposite of Tony, which was cool to see, and then goes to guitar as well.
Yeah. And we've also saw like where he was doing rhythm guitar on like The Calling. He was sort of strumming while Trevor was doing I think he called it the lead trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Like, these terms better
Between
than
him
I
and Tony, between the organ and a little bit of synth here and there, but they're just kind of going back and forth, and Billy's keeping the rhythm just like you hear it on the album, actually, which is kind of a neat benefit. Oftentimes musicians layer so much into a song that it sounds very different live, or it might sound, the prominent sounds sound very much the same, but you notice, there's no rhythm acoustic guitar there, or no other electric rhythm or something, because of overdub. So it's kind of a neat idea that they did that. It really filled out the sound.
Yeah, and I think you were also saying that on Owner of a Lonely Heart, he was playing like the arpeggios of the verses, like basically the same thing Trevor was playing, right?
Kind of the finger picking part that Trevor would be doing, but he was playing with the pick, kind of keeping that going through the whole thing, especially through the solo. It was really cool. I liked it.
Yeah, I do think it was easy for me to pick out like when he was singing along with them, when he's part
his
of
voice is distinct. You can hear his voice.
Yeah, when he's part of the Yes Choir, as people like to call it.
Yeah.
And Endless Dream, has such a very nice standout moment where, at the beginning, you see him and Chris playing bass together, and Billy has said he was playing an octave under Chris, which I think surprised you when I told you that, right?
Yeah, it did at first. And then we saw him playing, what was the song I said it looked like he was playing? Oh, that was in The Ladder. We'll get to that. Yeah, where he was playing doing the same thing Chris was doing, but on the guitar and about 2 octaves up. But we'll get to that. But it did surprise me. And I think because even though Chris was an extremely, of course, melodic player and one of the few bass players, along with John Entwistle, to be 2 of the first to play up on the neck and almost solo on the bass, long before Geddy started doing that, and both of them are his 2 biggest influences. I think of him as being such a bottom guy that when you said that, I'm thinking of, well, how much room is left to play under Chris? But that, again, just depends on the song and what's being played, of course.
Yeah, and that's another one where you can definitely hear him being part of the Yes Choir. And I feel like Endless Dream, playing that live with the band, it must have been like a huge moment for Billy, so much so that for Circa's chronological journey, where they play something from each Yes album from the first one up to The Ladder, he sings the "So take your time," that ending part of Endless Dream, and that's the only vocal part in that medley that Circa played, which is fascinating.
Oh, that's interesting. He was playing a 12-string bass along with Chris there, who's playing the bass that he used, of course, in Owner of a Lonely Heart on stage, and also Does It Happen. But I see we have some comments. Amy, how are you, Avid? Amy David Valentine says, love his work with Chris on Union, The More We Live, and Conspiracy 2. I love that The More We Live version. I love that song. Great song. Both versions, are all 5 or however many there ended up being, which is a good thing. And Kim Kim Goldsberry says, watching from Hill City, South Dakota. Awesome. I hope it's starting to warm up a bit there, Kim. And Adam Sears. Hey, Adam, how's it going? He says, hey, guys, watching from my home in Encino. Got back last night from Cruise to the Edge. Billy was great in the Dave Kersner band sets. That's awesome. Robert Nasir says, watching from Motown just outside Detroit. Great topic, great conversation. Thanks. And please, everybody, feel free to chime in if you have favorite live Billy moments. We're celebrating his birthday.
I saw that Robert posted a comment earlier, which I'll get to further in the discussion. But
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
and also Adam, like, let us know how Cruise to the Edge was. What were some of the highlights there?
I heard the whole thing was kind of sucky. Just kidding. I saw that Durga was recording parts for Fernando Padromo in his cabin for an album he was working on, and he was laying down tracks a couple days before then I saw Durga. So what a great way to work, just keeping at it, being productive, and not saying, oh, I'm going on a cruise, I'm just going to kind of tap out for a while and do that. No, guy's a work maniac, and so is Durga. So good on them for that.
Yeah, there are lots of cool photos coming out of that. Yeah. And also, before I forget, a few other comments which I'll read now. Happy birthday wishes from Glenn M. Hansen III, who says, happy birthday, Billy Sherwood. Nathan Tyler Lowry said, it will be a good day. Brian Sullivan said his live work playing Chris's lines was amazing. But when I heard Billy's bass lines on the Yes studio albums, I knew Yes's future was in good hands. And Karen Jarvie said, happy birthday, keep on rocking. And I see Adam just chimed in again. Yeah, saw Fernando's post, saw Durga do karaoke.
Yeah, what did she do? Tell us what she did. I hope she didn't just do Pink Floyd and her own stuff. I'm hoping she did like something, no one's seen her do, like Janis Joplin or, something crazy.
Yeah, because that is cool material, but it's also fun to hear when people sing stuff that's outside of what you'd expect,
Yeah, absolutely.
Kim Goldsberry adds, I actually sat next to Billy Sherwood at his first Yes concert. 77. Oh, wow. He told me after the show he was going to play with them when he grew up. Wow.
You got to put it out there. The universe will deliver it. That's awesome. Adam says, I don't remember. I was a little drunk.
All right. That's fair. That's fair.
At karaoke? That's odd. I never heard that before.
Right. So should we go to the Open Your Eyes tour? Was there anything else you want to add about?
No, let's do Open Your Eyes. Probably the most controversial Yes album, I think, in some ways, because there was such a curve from Union to Talk to Open Your Eyes, not just lineup wise, but musically and everything. I'm one that is a huge fan of that entire album. When I first put on that cassette, when I got it, and yes, I said cassette. When I first put on that cassette, new
state of mind.
I almost said new frame of mind. Oh my gosh. But I do love the album. It has nothing to do with my memory. I was floored. I was so floored. And one of the biggest things that floored me, two things: the big, enormous sound that was pleasing, and the Yes choir was just well alive for sure. It was so good. It really was. I dug that, and to have Steve Howe back in the fold, playing something completely different than we knew him as. To me, I thought it was great. It went from that all the way to From the Balcony, Fortune Seller. When I met Billy a few years later, or not that long later, actually, the next year, I told him that was my favorite song on the album. And I just love that album. I don't know why it takes so much heat, other than only from people maybe who are just such close to the edge, advocates, and that's all they want to listen to, and things like that. But that's okay. We're not here to talk about that. My point is that I love that album. I love Billy's vocals. I love his guitar playing, and he played probably at least half the keyboards on there. Igor plays a couple. Steve Porcaro plays a couple. I don't know the exact math on all that,
Yeah,
but
I think Steve Porcaro played 1 and Igor played 3, if I remember correctly.
yeah. And that's when, as Billy told us, they asked him to be the keyboard player of the band. And he's like, "Are you guys nuts? I can't play Awaken or
Yeah,
this or
well,
that." You know?
he knows his limits. Yeah.
Yeah, and he sure shines otherwise. I saw that tour at least twice, maybe a third time. The first time down in San Diego, took your brother Alex when he was 8. Then in at what used to be the Universal Amphitheater, John had back surgery not long before that. And walking backwards while he was singing, he tripped over a monitor and fell on his back. And Steve Howe's roadie shoes ran out there, picked him up. I mean, you could hear that oxygen getting sucked out of the building, everyone gasping, and then he got him on his feet and he just kept going.
Well, was that you're talking about Close to the Edge, right?
No, Open Your the song?
Well, when that happened.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, so that I'm pretty sure that was a 2002 show actually that you went to.
No, that's a different occasion. That's a different occasion.
Oh,
yeah. It was when they had the elementary school come out and sing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was that tour and it was in LA. Yeah.
All right, maybe I'm getting stories mixed up, but
well, there was an instance on that tour, and it might have been that show also when they played. Was it Close to the Edge where he kind of forgot the words, but the audience kept singing, and he picked back up.
I know we're like going all over the place.
Yeah, sorry. It's all Billy related.
Yeah, but the story you've told me is in one of the tours he forgot the opening words to Gates of Delirium, and Chris had to go over
Hollywood Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember you also told me one time John saying, "I get up, I get down," and then he tripped, and it was a 2002 show. So
maybe so, yeah. It all runs together in my brain. But if we can pause for a moment, speaking of the latter, let's read a couple comments.
Yeah.
As much as I do agree with this, I mean, as much as I do love Open Your Eyes, I do not disagree with this from Visualize Prague. To me, the latter was a huge improvement over Open Your Eyes. It was obvious that Open Your Eyes was cobbled together from songs intended for other projects, mostly the Chris Squire experiment. And I'll add to that, you're right, not only that, but it was not, the lineup wasn't really a solid, solidified lineup. It was a little, let's bring people in, let's get this together. Whereas the latter was freaking solid, and they had the late great Bruce Fairbairn as a genius producer working with them as well.
Yeah, and over the years, it's been clarified that only a couple of those songs were truly intended for Chris and Billy's project, but they did have a huge hand in writing a bunch of the new material that ended up on the Yes album they were working on, you know?
Like I love Man on the Moon. You're not a big fan of that, right?
Yeah, it's not for me personally.
Okay, so I'm just going to do this. Let's remove Steve. So, just kidding.
I also see that Adam commented again saying, "Love Open Your Eyes," and the Circa debut album feels like the true follow-up. And he also says, "I love the album too. Some of the harmonies for both Open Your Eyes and Circa inspired the vocals on Lobate's Scarp song You Have It All. So I was so beyond the moon when Billy agreed to sing on it."
That's awesome. Yeah. So moving to the latter, great album, great tour, great music. It's I think that's the most underrated Yes album, and this is so hard. You know, how do you pick a favorite Yes album? Maybe for some people it's easy, but for me it's difficult because I love so many things about every iteration of Yes. But I'd say if I really were to examine stuff, it's certainly in my top 10. It might be in my top 5. Production wise, it might be number 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, might be number 1. And the House of Yes DVD, I love that concert. Billy's so solid on vocals and guitar. And the why don't you start talking about the notes about songs that are not from the latter that they played on the tour that we picked out to
well I think we also want to talk about stuff from the Open Your Eyes tour.
Did I skip over that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Obviously, Billy shines on Open Your Eyes on that tour, but we also looked on some of the classic stuff that he got to play on there. So on Siberian Khatru, we were kind of looking at what he was doing there. He played this 12-string body electric, kind
Yeah,
of doubling
a
Chris
thin
with the
hollow body.
strums.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like basically like filling out like the space of the song.
Yeah, strumming along with the root of the riff, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and on Rhythm of Love, he was kind of had a huge role on that, like playing Trevor's parts and also singing the Trevor-esque vocals, right?
Right. Yeah, he did Trevor's vocals on that and also did the lead on that.
Yeah. And he does such a great job with the vocals that are from the Trevor era that like I still maintain that if Yes were to add more of the Yes West era stuff to their set list, they could have Billy do some of those vocals like on Changes, for example.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
could easily imagine him singing the parts that Trevor sang, and we know that Billy is really into that
Yeah.
song, so it would be really cool to see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
We looked at another older one. Yours is No Disgrace, I believe, or Perpetual Change.
Yeah, or we looked at Yours It's No Disgrace for House of Yes, and that was like a really, really great opening. Something we noticed is that they in both the Budapest and House of Yes concerts, they did that opening do 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 before going into the
Yeah, and
first
I
song of the
forgot
set
that.
list.
I only
Yeah.
remembered it from the latter tour. Yeah.
Yeah, so for Yours Is No Disgrace, that was also a thin, hollow body, right?
Yeah, it was. Um, and he played a lot of, if I remember right, you've got the notes. Let me see if I remember, which is a challenge
Yeah, well,
anyway.
after the mellow part, before the big instrumental jam, he's
Yeah,
playing the same as Steve, but 2 octaves up.
yeah,
Um,
that's right. That's right. That's where the 2 octave up thing came from. Yeah.
yeah, and during Steve's solo, Billy's playing low register strums that seem to be
Yeah.
half notes and whole notes to back up what Chris is playing.
Mhm. And kind of fill it out a bit. Yeah, that was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, we also looked at Lightning Strikes, one of the songs from the latter.
Love that
And
song.
yeah, he does a lot on that, doing the electric and rhythm guitar and doing lead and of
Great.
course the singing.
Yeah. Um, Visualize Prague chiming in again says, I've always wondered how things would have been played out had Igor stayed on as keyboard player. We still would have gotten magnification with the orchestra and only minimal keys parts. So interesting. I was telling Steve that Igor's Igor is a really, really great keyboard player. The way he did Awaken and covered some of the really nimble Wakeman parts is just so impressive. It's a shame, he kind of ousted himself with bad behavior. But to answer your question, would we have, history has shown, and they might be breaking the mold, or yeah, hopefully they'll break this mold. Yes, has never gone more than 2 albums of the same lineup in a row. So somehow it was inevitable that was going to happen, apparently, because it has happened since as well.
Right. And I do think maybe we would have gotten, instead of magnification, maybe we still would have gotten songs that ended up there,
That's
but
interesting.
with keyboards and maybe some different um styles and with Igor writing a bit more. I think it would have been kind of a different album, but I do think eventually they still would have gotten Rick back because I
That was in the
remember,
plan.
yeah, I
Anyway,
remember when we interviewed Billy a while back, he said that before he left, the vibes were it kind of felt like the vibes are that they wanted to get Rick back eventually, and that's part of why the 6-person configuration. Billy knew that wasn't going to last, and so he decided to leave on his own a chord, and then all the other stuff happened, and eventually they got Rick back.
Yeah.
So it's interesting stuff. But yeah, I'll get to Robert's comment after this next bit. We also looked at Awaken on that House of Yes video. For that one, you pointed out that it sounds like Billy's playing what Igor's playing, but on guitar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like the same chords, basically the foundational stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's also singing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm playing what Chris is playing in the chords.
Another great keyboard player watching, Adam Parrish. Love your piano work, Adam. Glad you are happy with the shift you made with your musical career. I love following all that stuff on social. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, for sure. So getting to Robert's comment about Billy memories. So Robert Nasir says, yeah, so I'm sort of gonna paraphrase this because it's kind of long, but he says, I love it. I was there in Motown for all 3 tours, a talk at Pine Knob Music Theater, Open Your Eyes at the Fox Theater, and the latter at Royal Oak Music Theater. He says that the concert Sonics simulcasting on the talk tour made it difficult to hear like what Billy's contributions were, but he has no doubt that his contributions were essential. And it was great seeing all 6 musicians on stage making such magnificent sounds. Endless Dream, he didn't like as much on the album, but thought that it was really brought out in an epic way live in the live setting.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating because to me, I do hear a difference, but I don't know that it's a huge difference.
Right,
Like
I
both
agree.
studio and live feel epic to me, but that's cool that you know, I guess if you were to pick enjoying the studio version more or the live version more, I guess it's preferable that the live version come across better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Open Your Eyes and the Latter were massive fun, especially the latter, pun intended, but also 102% true. And this was Steve Howe's colorful shirt and sombrero arrow, which he says really matters in Prague, which should be joyous. He said Igor faithfully reproduced the styles of Tony, Rick, and Patrick while bringing plenty of his own modern and classical chops. And yeah, he also wondered like how things would have been had they worked out in the long term. Billy's was a crucial addition to the band, and it was great to see him on the front of the stage interacting with Chris, taking the spotlight on tunes like Open Your Eyes and Owner. As much as I enjoy several of the tracks from Magnification, in particular the title track, Dreamtime and In the Presence of, I can't help wishing that the latter's style and that particular Billy Sherwood era had lasted longer. Happy birthday, Billy, and thank you for the music and the memories.
Awesome.
Yeah, like I definitely think Magnification would have had a different sound had even Billy still been around, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about it that even though there's no keyboard player, especially no Rick, that it kind of goes back to a futuristic, more modernized sound of that lineup, those 5, even
Right.
without, you know, Rick there somehow. It's most reminiscent tied to that, and I guess because there's 4 of them there, but still, you know, the orchestration and whatnot could have gone a whole different way to give it a whole different sound. Was produced really well.
Yeah, I do think the orchestration really gave Magnification a unique character.
Yeah.
And I do like how on the recent Yes albums they've used orchestra here and there to augment certain things. Like
It's
it's
like in the
not,
very beginning.
yeah, like it's not full on or like throughout the whole album like Magnification is, but
Like another member.
right. But it's cool that they were able to implement that here and there on the last couple albums.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, you know, the 6-member configuration, it's always been kind of strange to me, but it's also cool to like go back and pick out like what exactly was Billy doing here, you
Yeah,
know?
and what's cool is that it's, in my opinion, it's always worked on the album and live, and it's never felt like, oh, that's just some other baggage that someone's doing, whether it's Steve or Billy or whoever. It's always served a purpose. There's always been a reason for it that has contributed. You know.
Yeah, I see that Visualize Prague commented again asking when Billy and Igor were in the band for Open Your Eyes and The Ladder, were they full members of the band or just hired sidemen? So for Open Your Eyes, Billy was a full member at that point. Igor, I think he was for the time being a kind of a hired gun for
Yeah.
the album and tour, but for the latter, he was a full member.
Yeah. Both
Yeah.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them were, yeah.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about Billy before we close this out?
We've mentioned before that he's worn more hats in the band than anybody, as someone who's produced the band, someone who's mixed and mastered. He's played bass, he's played guitar, he's played keyboards, he's sung, he's written songs. No one's done all that. Not any one member has done all that. So I am curious to see where the current iteration of Yes goes, and what else Billy does, his work with Dave, and his arc of life, and everything else he does. He's young, he's younger than I am, so he's got I won't get into that. He's got a long way to go, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm eager to see what unfolds over the next 20 birthdays.
Nice.
All right. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. He not only has he worn like many hats in Yes, but he's also like super busy with a bunch of projects. He's produced a bunch of stuff and he's also guested on some stuff. I think I mentioned this the other day, but he recently guested on something. Let me see if I can find what it was and mention it again.
And while you look, I want to give Kim a shout out again, because I agree, I'm going to as well, as tip my hat to Billy. Be tipping my hat to Billy for his birthday. A lot of contributions to the band since as early as I guess
since Union, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's such a long time ago, and it's funny looking back because when we had him on, he told a story about how Chris would keep wanting him to like be the frontman, and he was like really cautious about that, and everything worked out well in the end. So the thing that Billy was recently on, Tomland by Ross Valerie. Billy wrote, "It was truly an honor to have toured with Asia as we opened for rock legends Journey a few years ago. I got to hang with another one of my bass heroes, Ross Valerie. Ross has made a great new solo record, and I just want to share this link to his first release from the record. The bass playing is so creative, and the tone is, in a word, awesomeness. Enjoy, and please spread the word for my friend Ross. Gotta support the bass players, people, for we are the lowest." Okay, so I think when I originally read this, I thought Billy was on that song, but I guess he's just plugging in a really good musician friend, a legend. So that's just as cool, plugging in all these like really cool people for people to check out.
Yeah, it's a great way to discover new music. I remember a few weeks ago we got the press release about Ross's album. So let's find, I don't remember if we looked or if we know who the drummer is, but let's get them on Drum Talk TV to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And this was a really fun conversation to have about Billy.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, I see Visualize Prague said, "I've been a fan of Billy since the first World Trade album pre-Yes. I've been very happy to see him become such an important member in Yes history." Yeah, not only that, but such a huge figure in prog rock now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. I remember Alan White playing me World Trade at his house, and like trying to explain to me because I didn't quite get it. Like, so there's this new guy, looks like he's going to join the band. He's from this really good band called World Trade, and he plays a lot of instruments. Have you heard of them? I said, I don't think so. And he put it on. I'm like, wow, that sounds really good. And then fast forward, I could hear Billy's influence that he brought from what he was doing already from what I heard in World Trade. So it's been neat to see that morph over so many years now. That was in when your brother was born, 1990 is when that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Time flies. Tempest fugit.
Yeah.
All right, folks, thanks so much for following what we do. You can write us if you have ideas, comments, questions, suggestions. We'll tell you how you can send donations as well. But you can write us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us audio only if you prefer that at anchor.fm/yesshift. And there is a donate button there. And at youtube.com/@yesshift and facebook.com/yesshift. Have I forgotten anything? I think that's all.
No, I think you got everything.
Okay, cool. So thanks for following what we do. More to come. The year is still just getting revved up. We're going to have more guests, more fun topics, more fun ways to include you. And we do love when you participate in the show and comment on our promo posts that we can read. Someone's calling now. And also,
yeah, with a suggestion for the show.
Yeah, exactly. Is that
all right?
No. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, so much. Take care.
Bye, everyone.